ladies and gentlemen. It is I, Emily Sophia, here to break down for you all the latest episode of Hannibal. We are on season 3, episode 3, 4. You would think I could do math, but at the moment that's not working for me. But I do know that the episode is called Aperitivo. So, spoiler alert before I dive into the mad thick of things, as I shall be bearing all in this review. And of course, this vlog comes hot off the presses of the gargantuan death bomb that was dropped on our existences this week regarding NBC's decision not to renew Hannibal. And watching this episode in light of that aftermath, going back and experiencing the aftermath of the incredibly emotional, crazy climactic season 2 finale, going back to that in this episode, while dealing with the knowledge on the outside of things happening in the story that things are coming to a potential possible end, really got my heartstrings pulled in a big way. And I do sense that I am going to be going on a very tumultuous journey over the course of these remaining episodes, and that I shall be digging my heels into the ground all the way to the end, just knowing that this is the precipice, and after that we don't know what's going to be coming back when, and the story is getting so deliciously good. It has been, it continues to be, but this constitutes such a major turning point, and oh boy did Bryan Fuller make us work for this moment, because he was certainly pleading the fifth regarding who actually survived the catastrophic conclusion of a season gone by. And now we know that in fact everyone except for Abigail, who now lives on in the mind palace of Will Graham, everybody except Abby is still in the game and has a very different approach to the matter of Hannibal's continued existence. Beyond bars, beyond death, he continues to live on, and all of the brokenness and bruises and scars, and I'll show you mine if you'll show me yours, that's going on in his wake. It's really quite crazy to see. So while this particular episode, of course, very much lacked the titular character, Hannibal, I think that we needed to spend this time with these other characters in their different states, and even to see too the different sorts of alliances that are forming, the emotional, relational breakage. There's a lot of surprises and twists and turns, so finally we get to go back and see what truly transpired, and I'm very grateful for that, because now I think the story in its entirety can now move forward, and we have this big momentous push, as now Will is hot on the heels of Hannibal, and Jack is hot on the heels of Will, and even people such as Alana and Verger have their vested interests in this wild goose chase after the the man of the hour, the monster himself. So let's take a look at everybody who we got to see again, who we didn't know if we would ever see again, although if you saw last week's episode and the 30-second teaser that immediately followed, you knew pretty much everybody who was going to be in this episode, so thanks for the spoilers, NBC. But anyway, so I think that one of the most fascinating parts of this episode in particular for me was what happened with Alana, because for some reason or another, I was almost sure that she was going to be out of the picture by this point. I don't know why my brain was so sold on that before I had any empirical evidence to suggest whether or not she made it. She got pushed out a window from a pretty decent height, and it just seemed, at the time, it seemed like a fitting end after all of her ridiculousness and the ignorance that she put up towards Hannibal's machinations in the previous season, willing herself to be his lover and at once refusing to know the true nature of this man, and in so doing turning her back on Will Graham, who was so incredibly wronged, and just, I mean, it was a hot mess. It was a hot mess, and I think a lot of people were very disappointed with her for not seeing further into the situation of bedding the cannibal. But there's a very different situation at work here now, of course, as she knows all, and the marrow that has seeped into her blood now has her thinking differently, and she's thinking that Old Testament revenge sounds like a dandy idea, and I can't blame her. I mean, I think that we see both Chilton and Alana feeling extremely scorned, but of course in very different ways. I mean, Alana was the one who shared an intimate sexual relationship with this man who, in their last encounter, promised to kill her. And so now she is very much in a very personal place of wanting to get revenge against Hannibal, and even declines Chilton's offer to, you know, or, well, he tries to push her to follow after Will, and in so doing come after Hannibal, and he tries to really prey on her in any vulnerable area that he can, and she sort of shuts him down at that point. And then, of course, later on, while she is still wheelchair bound, she actually discovers Will and sees that he isn't really so much in the mood to dialogue with her about the things that transpired, as she is yet another voice trying to tell him, why do you continue to refuse to see the worst of Hannibal? The worst has already happened. Can't you glimpse that? Can't you stare into the heart of darkness and know what you're seeing and refute it and move away from it and divorce yourself from it? But in fact, what Will tells her is that there is, well, to put it in Bates Motel terms, for those of you who watch that show, there is a cord between their hearts. It is one that is most unbreakable, and they are both managing to somehow walk across that trapeze line that is, you know, wrapped around those organs. But I forget the specific wording that Will used, but it was so incredibly rich and poetic. You know, this unspoken pact that they will continue to refuse to see the worst so that they can enjoy the best. Now, we know that Hannibal takes a very different perspective on that situation of seeing the best in Will after his conversation with Bedelia about forgiveness about coming to terms with the loss of that relationship that they forged. Decides he's got to have a little feast. And I don't think it's gonna turn out so well for Will in the least. That's my cute song. Anyway, I don't know where that came from, but that was the thing. So, yeah, Will reinforces time and time again his urge to go after Hannibal and to pursue this thing between them, this unspoken pact. Who needs words when he has Abigail in his head telling him to go for it, giving him the green light to whatever will transpire, and he even rejects Jack, who is seeking companionship in the fallout of all of this insanity. He is just not having it. There is only one man who can satisfy the hole in his heart and the scar in his side. And that is the man who gave it to him. So he's felt the taste of the butcher's knife, and he's going to kiss the cook. I'm just saying. So anyways, to look back at Alana, so she's trying to tenuously reach out to Will and realizes that's not something that's going to happen. And so now she's being called upon by Mason Verger, the faceless man. We'll throw a little Game of Thrones reference in there for ya. So she is now his therapist, but they are more or less, there's a mutual benefit that I think is at play here. And I do not think, but I know, because they are quite candidly discussing their plans to set the stage for Hannibal's demise. And now all they really need is the proper baits. But yeah, so it's so fascinating to see this alliance between Alana and Mason, both of whom feel deeply scorned and wronged by Hannibal and are ready to get something done about that situation. We see even the color palette of Alana has changed very drastically, with the intense bright reds, and just there's a ferocity and an intensity and a rigidity to her that I don't think that we have ever really witnessed before. And she's also got her badass cripple cane, which, you know, I think could double as other weapons, you know. But yeah, she is certainly a weaponized woman who is ready to go after the man who in every possible way and on every possible level tricked her to Kingdom Coming Back. And I think it's a very fitting response that she go forth in this state of vindictive rage because of the way that she was so beguiled merely by Hannibal's charms, refusing even his darkness. Whereas most of the others who have come into contact have really gotten to explore that side of Hannibal and have it kind of wash over them. Somehow she managed to be the closest to him and at once not even really see a true glimpse of that until the very bitter end. So I think that the shock of that, the physical shock of the way that she was even pushed out of the window and landed as she did, well, she's had a little bit of a wake-up call, a rude awakening, and she is not going to stop until she gets what is hers, and that is the head of Hannibal on a silver platter. I think that Mason himself wants that too. But yeah, I really enjoyed, of course, the opening scene of this episode with the face-off between Chilton and Mason. This constitutes the beginning of Chilton making the rounds, like this kind of sneering, vindictive Santa Claus, bringing everybody bouquets and attempting to incite them to wrath and to pursue the one who took him down. A little group therapy session. But so many people have wised up to the ways of Chilton, and nobody's going to want to get their revenge through him because he is driven completely by his own motives. And that's what Alana sees. But she's able to see in Mason almost more of a partner. She is in a position of power in which she can help him, he can help her. So there's also a bit of mutuality going on there too. It's really cool to see all of these twisted therapy relationships that have been at play even since the show's inception. That's been a dominant theme, even though Hannibal is not currently in practice, nor is Delia. But, you know, there are others to carry on the torch of twisted mind talks. So, yeah, Mason, he's a whole nother freaking deal. Let me tell you what. Pardon moi. So, of course, we had a casting switch between seasons, and be it as it may that Michael Pitt did a fantastic and just, it was a very Joker-esque performance that we got in the second season that was deliciously fun to watch unfold. But I'm not feeling a huge loss with him out of the picture, you know. Good on him. He's gonna do what he's gonna do. This was definitely a very ideal time to slip somebody else into the Faceless Man suit. And so now we've got the Hannibal era Gary Oldman voice going on, and the mushy, messy faceness that's not so pleasant to see, but certainly a darkly macabre, enjoyable aspect of the show that I'm very much glad is being brought to the screen in this way. It's a whole new dimension of the the army that is mobilizing against Hannibal. And also, in case you guys happen to miss it, all of you True Detective fans, just so you know, the Yellow King is Cordell, Mason Verger's personal physician, who doesn't really seem to have a problem with his boss talking about the way he is going to serve up a man live to consume. He's kind of down with it, giving him a nice little calf massage and just sort of contemplating life and the nature of his new occupation. So those two have formed a twisted sort of alliance as well. There are a lot of people that are coming into the sphere of the Vergers. Now I'm curious as to what is going to happen with Margot this season 2, as she went through an incredible trauma last season as well, outside of Hannibal's House of Horrors, but nonetheless was very deeply impacted. But yeah, it's great to see that there continues to be, or while there's more of a strong female presence in this season as compared to seasons past, and I feel very optimistic and excited about that. Because while we have the powerful bromance that is at the core and nucleus of this story, and this is very much an operatic love story of most murderous proportions. But it's cool to see this dominating female presence that's coming into play, and even Will's new partner in crime over in Europe. So we've got lots to look forward to in that respect. Yeah, so to touch on Chilton as well, he continues to be thoroughly unlikable, but at once very amusing. I'm so very glad to see that he is still in the picture. And I think that he's that little yiping dog that is nipping at everybody's heels as they're all trying to get back up on their feet. And even people like Jack are endeavoring to move on completely. He has endured so much loss that how could he commit himself to a man who was so integral in this loss that he has experienced? You know, he himself endured this death. Speaking about Jack now, sorry if I didn't make that clear, but he endured this death in the in the wine cabinet, and then returns to his dying wife, who imparts these words of wisdom to him that he is in a place where he can cut out the thing that is killing him. But what is also killing him is his wife's process of dying. So Jack more or less mercifully cuts that cord, and in sort of experiencing in his mind the renewed marriage with his beautiful wife who he has just lost, while laying her to rest, he gets a little letter. I wonder who it's from. Who else writes in such criminally fine cursive, you know, little calligraphy going on. But yeah, so Jack is sort of all over the place, but he's not really down to pick up on Chilton's invite. Not even Will himself, you know. He says that there's nothing to be found with him, even him being one of the people whom Hannibal framed. So Chilton is kind of awash in a sea of, you know, masked self-pity. But, you know, maybe he's gonna end up getting his through other means. He's just kind of watching and waiting and, you know, trying to wind up the little toy soldiers to go hunt down the man. What's he gonna do about it exactly? We shall see. But he is certainly weighed down by his pride, so I don't know how far he's going to venture this season. But he's definitely an impetus of sorts, and kind of a force behind all the agitation that everyone is experiencing in light of this tragedy. So we get to see Will this time around in a very peripheral kind of sense, because of course this is focused more primarily on the people who we didn't know if they actually survived, so I think that the show owed us that much to really delve into what they're going through. But yeah, Will, of course, is on a very different side of the spectrum of Hannibal, and in fact is openly confessing this love that he has come to feel. And that scene where Jack is like, hey, I thought maybe you might try and find me, and you know, Will is occupied in other ways, and goes so far as to say that the reason that he called Hannibal, and that crazy reflection of what happened in the very first episode of the first season, if you guys remember that, the phone call that Hannibal made to his cannibal friend. But yeah, so Will confesses that he made that call, you know, in that difference between the decision and the choice, you know, that choice that he ends up making is to try to get Hannibal to run so that Will could run with him. So now we get the full scope of the loss, of the bereavement that both Will and Hannibal are experiencing and coming to terms with in their own ways. But yeah, I mean, imagine the shock that has to be for Jack, who is now left feeling all the more responsible for sending Will on this spiral into a man who has just destroyed them all, yet without leaving them the opportunity to have peace and to rest. And so they are all new versions of these dead selves left to try to either reinvent or to reinvigorate their chasing after the man responsible for this mess. So Jack ends up telling Will at the funeral for Bella that he knows the inevitability of death, having tasted it himself, and imparting that and seeing that at work in his wife. And he says, hey, don't you be dying on me now. Because he knows the way that Will's errant heart is beating, and ultimately that puts a new nail in the coffin for Jack, and he also embarks on the highway to hell across the pond, as it were. But yeah, such a journey we got to experience in this episode, and I'm looking forward to bringing it all back around and bringing Hannibal into the fold, and maybe getting to kind of pick his brain a wee bit more now as he and Bedelia are waiting on whatever mayhem is coming their way. But lure them he most certainly has, and it is all through the person of Will, who is kind of personified this desire to pursue Hannibal in the form of Abigail. And I think that is such a brilliant device. I was a bit miffed, of course, when we were made to believe that somehow Abigail was in the picture, or at least I tried to fall for it, and then she's not. But the way that they have woven her in, it just makes so much sense, and I hope that we'll get to maybe see a little bit more of her as things progress. But now Hannibal and Will have so fully merged that they have almost become, even in terms of the way that light is cast on them and the way the camera lingers, like they are one and the same. They are indecipherable from one another, truly two sides of the same coin who are not complete unless they are in one another's presence. And at this point for Hannibal, it's looking like Will's got to be in his stomach, and you know the way that things go. But it's I'm going to do my absolute best to relish and cherish the crap out of the show while it is still on air on network television. Please, of course, be a part of the Save Hannibal movement. Do what you can to contact other networks, service providers. Make sure that the world knows that this is something that we want. We want to get people to invest in the continuation of the show, to agree not only to air forthcoming seasons, but to even offer financial support. So see what you can do as but a silver screen viewer to make this happen. Because, I mean, this is just the beginning, and I think that this season is ramping up to be one of the most spectacular yet. Each season has improved upon the other, each making its own identity, but advancing in such a wild way. My heart was just infused with so many new emotions in this episode, and I'm ready to see everybody in the picture now that the chessboard is set. Let the players play, baby. So thank you so much for watching this review. If there's anything that I happen to miss, any glaring omissions in this review, please bring them up in the comments below, and I will do my best to take a gander at those when I can. So thank you all so much, and as always, I will be back before you know it.